They say nothing ruins a baby shower like a fistfight between the woman giving birth and the woman who gave her life. I wasn't even through the damn doorway when she came at me like a wasp out of hell. "Oh no, no, no. What are you doing here?" she spat, her perfectly manicured fingers stabbing the air like a weapon. I raised the gift bag in my hand like a white flag. "I was invited." "You weren't," she snapped. "That was sent by mistake." Mistake. Right. The room froze. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling and that godforsaken banner, "Welcome Baby Jameson," fluttered like it had something to say. "I didn't come to start anything," I said. "I just wanted to give my grandson a gift." "You mean my son?" she hissed, stepping closer. "You're not even family." That word, family, it landed like a slap across the face. The kind that makes your ears ring and your soul snap clean in two. I looked around. Her husband stood there, Jake, all teeth and fake sympathy, wearing a sweater too tight for a man who never lifts anything heavier than a lie. His parents with their tight-lipped smiles. The friends with baby blue dresses and judgment in their eyes. "Excuse me?" I asked louder now. "You sayin' I'm not family?" "You heard me." She was shaking, whether from rage or fear I couldn't tell. "I don't want you here. You're not welcome. You never have been." The gift bag slipped from my hand, landed soft on the carpet like a broken promise. "You ungrateful little—" "Don't," she barked. "Don't you dare raise your voice." "Oh, sweetheart. You ain't seen me raise my voice." I stepped forward. "I raised you. I wiped your shit-stained diapers. I fed you from a jar when I couldn't even feed myself. That doesn't give you the right. It gives me every damn right." My voice cracked like thunder. "You don't get to erase me just because your in-laws think I'm not shiny enough for the goddamn Christmas card." Gasps from the crowd. One woman pulled out her phone. I could almost feel the red recording dot blinking in the air. Jake finally found his voice. "Everyone's." I repeated, tasting venom. "You mean your sake? You mean before I tell everyone what you really do when you're working late?" His face paled. "Don't push me, sweetheart," I said, looking back at my daughter. "Because I've got stories your baby boy ain't ready to hear." That was when she slapped me. Open palm. Right cheek. Loud enough to silence the baby playlist playing through someone's Bluetooth speaker. I didn't flinch. I just turned my head back toward her, slow and steady, like a storm deciding where to strike next. "You done?" I asked. She trembled. Maybe she thought I'd slap her back. But I don't do that. "No. I take my time." I leaned in, just enough for her to feel my breath. "You want me gone? Fine. But don't forget, you're not the only one who knows how to hold a grudge." And with that, I picked up the gift bag, walked to the dessert table, and gently placed it beside the cupcakes. "Tell your son this is from someone who loved him before he had a name," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Then I turned and walked out. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Back home, I sat in the quiet. My living room still smelled like lavender and old coffee. The couch sagged more on one side, the spot where I always sit, always watch, always think. I took off my coat. The bruise on my cheek pulsed, not from her slap, but from the memory. Her words still rang like church bells from hell, "You're not family." The photos on my wall hadn't moved, but they stared at me different now. There she was at 6, missing tooth, scraped knees, grinning like the world owed her nothing and she loved it anyway. There she was at 12, science fair trophy in hand. I stayed up all night building that stupid volcano. There she was in her prom dress. God, how she hated that color. I told her blue made her look strong. She wore it for me. And now? Now she looked at me like I was dirt on her porch. I walked over to the mantel, touched the edge of a picture frame. Then my fingers slid to the envelope beside it. Unopened. 5 years old. Postmarked New York. Her handwriting. The last letter she ever sent. Before Jake. Before the baby. Before I became a ghost in her life. I didn't open it then. I figured, why read what I already knew? She was leaving. For good. But the story didn't start at that shower. No. The real betrayal began much earlier, like most wounds do. Quiet. Slow. Almost polite. It started when she met Jake. He was all charm and perfect hair. I should have known right then, men who style their eyebrows like that always have something to hide. He courted her fast. Fancy restaurants. Promises with too many syllables. And suddenly my phone calls started going to voicemail. "Oh, sorry, Mom, I've been so busy. Jake and I are just overwhelmed with wedding planning. I'll call you next week. Promise." Then came the wedding. They didn't even tell me about it. I found out on Facebook. A photo of her in white standing beside that bastard, surrounded by people I'd never met. People who smiled like they'd always been there. People who clapped for a new family like the old one had never mattered. I messaged her. Nothing. Wrote a letter. Returned to sender. Even drove to the address I had. Gone. Moved. No forwarding. So I did what any mother would do. I waited. I left the porch light on every night for 2 years. And then one day I saw her. In the grocery store. Pregnant. Glowing. She didn't see me. But I followed her aisle by aisle like a ghost trailing its unfinished story. She bought oat milk. She used to hate that. I used to tell her it tasted like wet cereal spit. But Jake liked it. So now she did too. She smiled at strangers, laughed at a joke from the cashier. And then she walked out. No call. No message. No hug. She had walked past her mother like I was nobody. That night, I pulled out the box. The lockbox under the floorboard. The one I hadn't touched in a decade. Inside were pieces of who I used to be. My old law school ID. Court transcripts from the custody fight with her father. A newspaper clipping with my name under the headline. Whistleblower brings down state senator. A USB drive labeled for emergency only. And a letter I wrote to her when she was 5, tucked behind an ultrasound photo. I sat on the floor and wept like I hadn't in years. Because this wasn't just about being unloved. It was about being unmade. They were erasing me. They think they're clever, building a life without me. They think cutting someone off is the same as cutting them out. But I know things. I know how to read a deed. How to follow a paper trail. How to tell the difference between a man who loves with his hands and one who controls with them. I know how people change names, but not hearts. And more than anything, I know my daughter. She doesn't have the spine for cold cruelty. She borrowed that from Jake. I could see it all over her face at that baby shower. The panic behind the fury. The crack just under the surface of her lipstick smile. It wasn't hate I saw in her eyes. It was fear. Fear that I might reveal something she's tried to forget. Something he doesn't know. Something I've buried so deep, even the devil would have to dig twice to find it. But I remember. I remember everything. Like the day she came home crying, bloody sock in hand, because some teacher told her she'd never amount to anything. Or the time she ran away at 15. I drove all night to find her sitting on a swing in the park. Said she wanted to know what it felt like to disappear. Or the night she called me at 2 a.m. from a dorm room 3 states away, whispering that she thought she might be pregnant, and I told her to breathe, and I wired her the money, and we never spoke of it again. You don't forget those things. You don't forget being the person someone calls when they're at their worst. And you don't expect to be the one they erase when they're at their best. I didn't want revenge, not at first. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to hold that baby, smell the powder on his neck, sing him the lullaby my mother used to sing me. But when she said those words, when she looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't family, something inside me twisted. Like a rope finally snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I went home, sat in my chair, and stared out the window until the sun was gone. Then I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and opened the second drawer. The one with the medal. A bronze star. Most people don't know that. I don't tell them. Because it never mattered much outside the uniform. But in that moment it meant something. It meant I wasn't weak. I wasn't useless. I had seen real battles. Not baby showers. Real blood. Not confetti. And I'd survived every single one. So what made her think I wouldn't survive this? What made her think I wouldn't fight back? No. Not with fists. I'd already fought with those. This time I'd fight with memory. I pulled out the folder beneath the medal. Old receipts. Handwritten notes. A photo of Jake, drunk, red-eyed, from a night he thought no one was watching. The USB drive. I plugged it into my old laptop. The screen blinked once, twice, then loaded. Audio files. Email threads. PDFs of documents I'd quietly collected over the years. Some part of me had always known this day would come. A mother knows. Even when she pretends not to. I named the folder. Insurance. It wasn't about ruining her. That would be too easy. Too fast. It was about truth. Truth has teeth. It doesn't yell. It bites. And the first bite? That would come quietly. I made a call that night. A man named Clarence. Used to be a PI before his liver gave out. Still owed me for a favor back in '98. Told him I needed someone followed. Just once. I didn't tell him who. He didn't ask. That's the beauty of old friends. They don't need to understand. They just need to know you're serious. I hung up, sat back, and looked around my little house. Every corner filled with years of being someone's mother. And now? Now I was no one's anything. Unless I changed that. Unless I took back what they'd taken from me. My name. My place. My story. You see, I'm not here to teach her a lesson. That's not what this is. This is a reminder. Of who raised her. Of what I gave up to keep her safe. Of what it means when someone says I'm not family. Because if I'm not family, then I don't have to play nice. If I'm not family, then I don't have to protect their secrets anymore. If I'm not family, then I'm free. And there's nothing more dangerous than a woman who has nothing left to lose. Especially one who's already lost it all. So let them laugh. Let them sip their sparkling punch and smile their brittle smiles. Let them believe the story's over. Because it's not. It's just beginning. And when the truth finally shows up, wrapped not in ribbons but in records, not in cupcakes but in consequences, they'll all remember the day they told me I didn't belong. And they'll wish they'd left that invitation in the damn trash. Because I'm coming for what's mine. Not just the baby. Not just my daughter. But every single thing they built on top of my bones. They thought that slap was the end of it. They thought walking me out of that baby shower like a stranger with Alzheimer's was the final nail in the coffin. Idiots. That slap wasn't the end. It was the match. And now the whole goddamn forest was about to burn. I started that same night. No tears. No pity party. Just me, a stiff bourbon, and a notepad I hadn't used in 10 years. I flipped to the first clean page and wrote one word across the top in capital letters. War. Then I listed 3 names under it. Jake. Evelyn. Tessa. Jake, the husband. The show pony. Mr. Judge-to-be who thought he could wash off his past with a little cologne and a campaign poster. Evelyn, his mother. The real snake. That Botox banshee had her claws in everything from local charities to zoning committees. Made sure her last name was stitched into the fabric of the town like mold under wallpaper. And Tessa, my daughter. My daughter who'd let them train her like a dog. Sit, smile, betray. They were the unit. But I knew how to dismantle units. You don't fight them head-on. You find the weakest link. The one who thinks they're the strongest. And Jake? Jake had always had a loose jaw and an even looser zipper. So I started there. You know what people forget about old women? They forget we listen. We remember. And we wait. So I waited 3 days. Didn't send a message. Didn't call. I knew they'd think I was licking wounds. Good. Let them underestimate me. While they were sipping espresso in their open-plan kitchen, I was pulling files from a cabinet they didn't know existed. Court records. Land registry copies. Old family trust paperwork I'd kept after her father's funeral. I'd sign nothing away. I was never that stupid. Just one of those documents would send a ripple through Jake's inheritance. 2 would gut him. But I needed more. So I called Clarence again. Told him I needed someone followed. This time I gave him a name. Jake. Within 2 days I had photos. Him at a hotel, walking out with a woman who was definitely not my daughter. Different hair every time. Always same room. I laughed when I saw the timestamp on the photo. Same afternoon as the baby shower. Classy bastard. Next call was to Maria. Maria owed me. I'd helped her son beat a bullshit deportation order years back when I still had legal teeth. I told her I needed a favor. Nothing illegal. Just some access. She worked front desk at the hospital. One whispered ID number later, I had access to Evelyn's medical file. And what do you know, Miss Socialite had a prescription problem. Real nasty one. Painkillers. Refill after refill. Different doctors. No documentation. My pen tapped the paper. Addiction. Scandal. Potential custody angle. Perfect. Now Tessa. She was trickier. Because you can't blackmail someone who already hates you. But you can remind them who they used to be. So I started gathering photos, emails, notes she wrote me during college. Even the voicemail she left on my birthday 6 years ago, drunk, sobbing, telling me she didn't want to turn into her mother-in-law. That would come later. Right now, I needed to make my first move. Not a bomb. A whisper. People like Evelyn and Jake, they live on image. That's their god. And I was about to scratch its paint. I mailed an envelope. No return address. Inside? Just one photo. Jake. Hotel hallway. Kissing a brunette in heels. No note. No explanation. It went to Evelyn's mailbox. Not Tessa's. Let the poison start at the roots. 3 days later, I got the ripple I wanted. Clarence texted me, Jake's car parked at a different house overnight. New girl. Different town. 2 days after that, Tessa posted a cryptic quote on Instagram about betrayal. No hashtags. Just. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hand you the blade. Atta girl. Then I hit the next pressure point. I contacted a local reporter. Not the big leagues. Just a gossipy community blog type. Told her I had proof of campaign fund mismanagement from Jake's DA run. Asked if she wanted the exclusive. She nearly drooled through the phone. She ran it under the headline. The man who would be judge, skeletons in the courthouse closet? Didn't take long for it to hit Facebook. The comment section exploded. And Jake? Oh, he knew it was me. He just couldn't prove it. I made sure of that. My third move came 1 week later. Subtle. Surgical. I sent a letter to the local family court, signed anonymously, requesting a reevaluation of Evelyn's charity financials due to suspicious expenditures. Normally, that'd go nowhere. But I attached a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet I'd compiled over 6 years, showing funds routed through a community outreach group straight into her personal accounts. I never accused. I just inquired. That's the difference between rage and strategy. One gets you arrested. The other gets you results. Sure enough, the board launched an internal review. Donations stopped coming in. And Evelyn? She vanished from 3 public events in a row. But still, I stayed silent. Not a peep on social media. No calls to Tessa. No fireworks. Because this wasn't about yelling. It was about reminding them that I never stopped watching. Never stopped knowing. Let the walls creak. Let the cracks form. They didn't know where the leak was. That was the beauty of it. I was invisible, but I was everywhere. And they were starting to sweat. You don't just pull a house down by knocking at the door. You take out the beams one by one. And now Jake and Evelyn were leaning on splinters. So I turned to the third name on my list. Tessa. Because while the world blamed Jake for the affair and Evelyn for the charity scandal, nobody was looking at her. And that's exactly what I needed. Not to hurt her. Not yet. But to shake the cage she'd built around herself so carefully. So I left her a gift. Not at her home. Not at her work. At the OB/GYN office. A manila envelope. No name. No note. Just a flash drive. Inside, a single video file. A recording from my old answering machine. Tessa's voice. 6 years ago. She's drunk. Crying. Says she's scared. Says she misses me. Says Jake is different when the doors close. Then she says something she probably forgot the next morning. I don't know who I am anymore. I wanted her to hear that. Not to blackmail her. To remind her. Because the worst prison isn't built of bars. It's built of mirrors. Ones that show you how far you've fallen. That file? It didn't go public. It wasn't a threat. It was a whisper in the dark. But whispers, if placed right, echo forever. I kept the heat rising. I filed a second anonymous complaint, this time with the election committee. Not accusing. Inquiring. Jake's records. Donor overlaps. Undocumented gifts. Let them dig. Let them wonder. The chaos wasn't about damage. It was about direction. Because chaos, when controlled, moves people exactly where you want them. And right now they were moving toward panic. Clarence reported Jake had started sleeping at his office. Evelyn was seen at a clinic 2 towns over. And Tessa? She finally reached out. A text. After all this time. Just 2 words. We need to talk. I smiled. No, baby. You need to listen. I agreed to meet her at a diner. Not a fancy cafe. Not her polished kitchen. An old booth. Vinyl seats. The kind of place that serves eggs in greasy baskets and gives you a second coffee without asking. She showed up looking like a porcelain statue. Flawless skin, flawless nails, flawless lies. But her eyes gave her away. Red. Tired. Scared. She sat down across from me. Didn't speak for 30 seconds. Then she asked if I'd done it. I looked her straight in the face. You're going to have to be more specific. Her jaw clenched. She asked again. Slower. More careful. Did you send the photos? Did you leak the donations? Did you plant the election tip? I stirred my coffee. Then said the most honest thing I've ever said in my life. I did what I had to. She blinked. Then she said it. That sentence that told me everything I needed to know. You're going to ruin my life. And I told her. No. You already did that. I'm just here to light a match under the ashes. And here's where you, the viewer, need to listen to me real close. This isn't just a story. This is what happens when you forget where you came from. When you erase the people who bled to build your foundation. When you trade legacy for lifestyle. Because family doesn't disappear. It hibernates. And when it wakes up, you better pray it doesn't remember everything. Now if you're still watching, if you haven't clicked off or flinched away from the truth, this is your moment. Subscribe. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's the start of justice. And you won't want to miss what happens when the whole house finally collapses. Back home, I laid out my final plan. Each piece perfectly aligned. The audio, the photos, the old trust documents, the emails, the sworn testimony. All legal, all real, and all loaded into a single encrypted file. But I wasn't going to publish it. Not yet. Because this wasn't about exposure. This was about choice. I mailed a letter. To Jake. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats. Just a note. You have 7 days to do what's right. Or I do it for you. No signature. He knew exactly who sent it. He's got 6 days left. And every one of them is going to feel like a noose tightening. Because the beauty of a slow burn? Is that everyone starts sweating before the fire even gets close. That's the plan. Not vengeance. Correction. And when the next part begins, you'll see the strings being pulled. The dinner invitations. The inheritance trap. The trapdoor of secrets no one saw coming. Because when I said I was done being erased, I meant it. They forgot who raised them. Now they'll remember. People think the most dangerous part of a storm is the thunder. It's not. It's the silence before. That's when everything holds its breath. And right now, my enemies were choking on it. Jake didn't respond to the letter. Of course he didn't. Men like him don't know how to deal with someone they can't charm, cheat, or sue. So I made sure he'd get a second one. This time hand-delivered. By a lawyer. A real one. I dipped into the last of my savings, called an old colleague who owed me from the whistleblower case in '94. He owed me his bar license, and he knew it. I told him what I had. He laughed. Said it sounded like a movie. Told him that's exactly what it would feel like. Then I handed him the documents. All of them. I told him to serve them on Jake in public. So he picked the community fundraiser. Big event. Local press. Fancy hors d'oeuvres. And while Jake was shaking hands and sipping sparkling water, my lawyer walked up and tapped him on the shoulder. Service of documents. Civil liability. Potential fraud. Inheritance dispute. Jake's face dropped like a bad stock. Cameras caught it. Of course they did. Because I made sure of it. That night, I watched the video a dozen times. His smile fading. The tremble in his jaw. The way Evelyn reached for his arm like a child grabbing a lifeboat. Beautiful. But I wasn't done. No. That was just the appetizer. The real feast? That started with a phone call. To Tessa. She didn't answer the first 3 times. On the 4th, she picked up. Her voice was flat. Exhausted. I told her there was going to be a dinner. Just her. Just me. And the lawyer. She said she wasn't coming. I told her that was fine. But that if she didn't come, the contents of the folder would be submitted to the state attorney's office the next morning. Silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. Like a little girl, not a woman. What do you want? I didn't answer. Because it wasn't about what I wanted anymore. It was about what was right. The dinner was at a neutral place. A cabin. Owned by a friend who owed me a favor. Everything I had now was built on favors and memories, and both were worth more than gold. The cabin was old, wooden, and smelled like pine and dust. Perfect. I set the table myself. 3 plates. 2 glasses of wine. 1 envelope in the center. She arrived late. Didn't knock. Just walked in. Didn't speak. Just sat. I slid the envelope toward her. Inside were 3 things. The revised will that put my name back on the family trust. The custody evaluation request I had drafted. And the medical report showing Evelyn's opioid history. She stared at them. Then looked at me like I was a stranger. But not the kind you fear. The kind you wish you hadn't forgotten. I spoke first. You let them convince you that blood doesn't matter. You let them teach you that love has to be earned with silence. I taught you better than that. She stayed silent. I stood up, poured her a glass of wine. I told her she could walk out, right now. And if she did, I would vanish. No letters. No lawsuits. No headlines. But if she stayed, if she listened, I'd tell her everything. The whole truth. And then she'd have to decide if she wanted to live a lie. Or finally come home. She stayed. Of course she did. Because the truth? It's gravity. It pulls even the loss back to the ground. So I told her. About Jake. About Evelyn. About the forged signatures, the backdoor deals, the money laundering hidden behind charitable smiles. Then I told her the truth about her own birth. Because that's the twist no one saw coming. Not even her. She wasn't mine. Not by blood. She was left at a clinic by a girl no older than 15. The staff knew me. Knew I couldn't have kids. They asked me to take her for a week while they sorted placement. A week turned into a month. A month turned into forever. No paperwork. Just a whisper and a prayer. I raised her like she came from my own veins. And never told her otherwise. Until now. Not to hurt her. But to free her. Because the people she thought were her family, the ones who used her as a pawn, a shield, a brand extension, they were nothing but performance. She came from nowhere. But she became someone. Because of me. Not despite me. She cried. Not loud. Not messy. But the kind of crying that split silence like a scream. She said she didn't know what to say. I told her that was fine. Because what she did next would say everything. And then I stood up. Walked out of the cabin. Left her there with the truth. And let her decide what came next. I left her in that cabin with every truth she had tried to outrun. And when I say I walked away, I mean it. I didn't look back. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't beg her to choose me. I gave her the dignity of the decision. Because that's the one thing no one else ever gave me. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. She didn't say hello. She didn't say my name. She just said the date and time of the baby's naming ceremony. And asked me to be there. Not as a guest. As family. I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. You want the twist? It's not that she came back to me. It's not that Jake got served. It's not that Evelyn got exposed. It's that I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. All I did was hold up a mirror. And let them see the rot they'd painted gold. Jake? The lawsuit triggered an ethics review. Turns out, campaign finance violations are a hell of a lot harder to ignore when you're under oath. His confirmation to judgeship? Pulled. Rescinded. Disqualified. Evelyn? The board forced her resignation. Charity accounts frozen pending investigation. Her legacy? Now a cautionary tale told at garden parties between fake laughs. And Tessa? She gave me the thing I wanted most. No, not the baby. The truth. She told the truth. To the press. To the donors. To her friends. She told them what she'd allowed. What she'd ignored. And most importantly, what she'd survived. And they hated her for it. Because the world doesn't reward redemption. It punishes confession. But I stood beside her anyway. Because that's what mothers do. Even when they're not yours by blood. The day of the ceremony, I didn't wear black. I wore red. Not for rage. For rebirth. She placed the baby in my arms. His name was written on a little card. Simon Thomas Hale. Simon, after her biological father who she'd never met. Thomas, after my late husband, the man who taught me that love isn't something you inherit. It's something you build with your bare hands. She named him for both her lives. The one she came from. And the one she finally chose. I held that boy like he was made of fire and future. And I whispered something in his ear. Something only he and I would ever know. A promise. That no matter how many names people tried to take from him, he'd always have mine. You think that's the end? No. That was just the ignition. 2 days later, I mailed one final envelope. This time to the local news station. No anonymous tip. No cloak and dagger games. I signed it in bold ink. M. L. Carter. Inside. Everything. The whole web. Jake's hotel escapades. Evelyn's prescription ring. Forged trust documents. Audio, video, legal transcripts. Let the town judge for themselves. Let the truth be free. And let me never be erased again. Because I've learned something in all of this. Something they don't put on gravestones or in history books. When people say you're not family, what they mean is, you're not convenient. You don't fit their curated story. You don't match the wallpaper. So they cut you out like a tumor. But here's the truth. You can't amputate the foundation. You can't orphan yourself without consequence. And you sure as hell can't bury a woman who taught herself to rise. Funny thing about silence. Once it used to feel like abandonment. Now, feels like peace. I sit in the same chair I've sat in for 27 years. Same sag on the cushion. Same view of the porch where wildflowers grow through the broken floorboards. But something's changed. This house used to feel like a waiting room for ghosts. Now it feels like a home again. Because someone's finally come back. Not just my daughter. Not just the baby. But me. The town talks different now. You can hear it in the grocery store, whisper stitched with guilt. They used to look through me. Like I was a window. Now they look at me like I might see through them. The woman who made the judge disappear. That's what they say. The woman who brought down the Hale family with nothing but truth and a little paper. They say it with fear. With awe. Sometimes even with respect. But I don't need their words. Respect, when earned by fear, is empty. What I have now is the weight of knowing I didn't vanish. They tried. Lord knows they tried. But I didn't go quietly. I didn't let my story end with that baby shower. There's a little wooden box on my kitchen counter now. It holds every letter Tessa wrote me in secret. She started writing again after the ceremony. Said speaking in person felt too fragile, too exposed. Said words came easier when she had time to bleed them onto paper. Each one is dated. Each one is signed the same. To the only woman who ever raised me right. I read them every morning with my coffee. And I answer her. Not with pen. Not with phone. But with actions. With the way I hold Simon. With the way I kiss his head and hum the lullaby I used to sing to her. With the way I build a new legacy out of ashes. She comes by now. Tessa. Not every day. Not with fanfare. She just shows up, sometimes with Simon in tow, sometimes not. We sit in silence more than we talk. That's how you know forgiveness is real. When you don't have to speak it to live it. She asks me questions now. About the past. About her real mother. About the girl who left her at that clinic and never looked back. And I answer her. Not with venom. But with honesty. I tell her that girl must have been scared out of her mind. That I don't blame her. That sometimes love looks like leaving, even when it shouldn't. And that I was lucky. Lucky to have found her. Lucky to have been chosen to raise her, even if no one asked me to. She cries when I say that. Every time. Because she knows now what it cost me. All of it. And she knows what it means to say it out loud. Simon's crib is in the corner of my bedroom now. She says it's just for visits, just in case, but we both know the truth. Sometimes she sleeps on the couch while I rock him. Sometimes she leaves in the middle of the night, no explanation, no apology. And that's okay. Healing isn't linear. It comes in circles. And every time she walks back through that door, it closes the loop a little tighter. People ask me if I regret it. If I regret going to the shower. If I regret burning bridges that truthfully had already fallen. And I tell them no. Because bridges built on lies aren't bridges. They're traps. I didn't burn them. I lit a path through the smoke. And my daughter, my beautiful, broken, brave daughter, she followed it back to me. So no. No regret. Only clarity. Every story ends. Even the loud ones. But the good ones? They echo. They leave fingerprints on hearts they never touched. If you're still watching, still listening, still sitting there wondering if your pain has a place, let me say this. You are not disposable. You are not a footnote in someone else's memoir. You are a chapter worth reading. A flame worth feeding. A family worth remembering. I used to look in the mirror and not recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired. Worn. Like a photo left in the sun too long. But now I look and I see something different. I see lines written by survival. I see scars that tell stories better than ink ever could. I see a woman who stood her ground and built something sacred from the rubble. People think revenge is about destruction. It isn't. Revenge, real revenge, is reclamation. Taking back what was stolen. Your name. Your dignity. Your damn place at the table. And carving your initials into it so deep no one ever forgets you were there. Simon's first steps happened in my kitchen. Right next to the stove where I used to cook Tessa pancakes shaped like animals. He waddled toward the fridge, arms outstretched like a little drunk sailor. Tessa clapped. I cried. Not the kind of crying that rips you apart. The kind that stitches you back together. Piece by piece. He fell on his diaper, looked around, then crawled right into my lap. And in that moment, I swear I could feel time folding in on itself. Like the universe was saying, here, you get one more chance to get it right. And this time? I will. Tessa keeps asking about the old case. The one that made headlines. The one I never talked about much. I tell her now. Because she needs to know she came from fire. And fire doesn't die. It flickers. It hides. It waits. But it never goes out. And when it burns again, it lights the path for others. I was that fire once. I thought it had gone out. But now I see it in her. I see it in how she speaks with her back straight. I see it in how she holds her son like a shield. I see it in how she looks at me, not with shame, not with regret, but with reverence. That's my daughter. That's my legacy. Not just survival. Resurgence. The press still sends me questions. Wanting to know if I'll give a statement. If I'll confirm the rumors. If I'll sell the story. I ignore them. Because this isn't for them. This isn't for clicks or clout or courtrooms. This is for every woman who's ever been told she's too much. Too old. Too loud. Too broken. This is for the grandmothers erased from photo albums. For the mothers struck from the guest list. For the daughters who think they're alone in their grief. You're not. We are not. We're just quiet sometimes. Until we can't be. There's a bench by the lake I go to now. Simon likes the ducks. Tessa brings a blanket. We sit. We feed the birds. We listen. She asked me once what I'd name this chapter of our life. I thought about it for a while. Then I told her. The return. Not because we went back to what we were, but because we became what we should have always been. A family. Not defined by blood, but by bond. By bravery. By a choice to stay even when it hurts. I still keep the baby shower gift bag. Tucked in the closet. Still wrapped. Still perfect. One day, when Simon is old enough, I'll give it to him. Not because he needs it, but because it's a reminder. That even when the world told me I wasn't family, I showed up anyway. And I stayed. So if you've made it this far, if you're still with me, let me ask you one thing. Don't forget us. Don't let this story be just another click. Share it. Not for me. For someone who's sitting alone right now thinking they don't matter. For someone who just got told they're not family. Remind them they are. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. It wears wrinkles. It smells like lavender in old books. And it sings lullabies in a cracked voice that still knows the tune. Last night, I looked at Simon sleeping in his crib beside my bed. The moonlight hit his cheek just right. And I whispered a line I'd never spoken aloud before. Family isn't who you're born from. It's who you survive for. And with that, I turned out the light. And let the silence settle like a crown. So if this story cracked something in you, if it made you clench your fists, bite your tongue, or whisper damn right under your breath, then don't just scroll away. Subscribe. Because this channel? It's not just for entertainment. It's for every forgotten grandmother, every ghosted parent, every woman who's been erased and came back swinging. You don't want happy endings here. You want justice. And I promise, I'm just getting started.